contract at 2.9%, was slightly lower than 3.95%, which the second quarter came in with. GDP below forecast of 1.9%. Some sectors were stellar performers. Cement manufacturing was a massive 8.14% in the quarter we just finished, against 3.84%. Cement manufacturing, of course, you know the story about how the construction sector is growing. The Buhari's administration is spending so much money, record amount of money, in building new roads, bridges, laying tracks for new railways. So cement is a major component of this. And if you look at fixing the entire mess that the Apapa Port and the adjoining roads and highways is all about, this is part of the story that is moving the cement manufacturing sector, and you understand why the cement stocks are on the exchange, and they are the ones investors will take this. Adedayo Bakare of Afrinvest is live there. Do you think with this cement manufacturing GDP a massive, nearly 5%, I can take that to the market? I can talk to my broker if, well, this is a sector to stick with.
The manufacturing sector did, well at 1.9% growth, but we shouldn't get too far ahead of ourselves. This is still, very, very weak. The manufacturing sector is barely 10% of GDP in Nigeria, and when you think in terms of the challenges the sector has faced between 2015 and 2017, we should be seeing a much better performance. So while we've seen a very good performance in cement, in food and beverages as well, you still see that these are still very, very weak. In textiles and footwear segments as well, if you see the performance, it's still very, very weak as well. So in terms of the aggregate numbers, it looks it's positive and it's improving, but it's really not as significant as you want it to be. And if you bring that down to the market, where you see the earnings releases of companies in the beverage segment and also in the food segment, you see that we've seen this improvement, but performance is still very weak. So it's still not broad-based across all segments of manufacturing. So what that tells us is that there's still a lot of room for growth in manufacturing, and we should work towards actually ensuring that we have as much as double-digit growth in manufacturing. We're at a very, very low base, and even between 2010 and 2014, we saw a very, very good performance. We saw manufacturing doing double-digit growth before the contraction and the weak recovery we're seeing now. So we need a much better outing in manufacturing.
Okay, thank you, Adedayo. Let's cross back to our Abuja studios, where Uwaleke is reconnected back now, professor of capital markets at the National State University. Sorry, we lost you a little bit earlier. A quick one, Prof. We talked about the financial services industry while we lost that transmission signal with you. That sector contracted in the quarter under a review. Why do you think this sector is contracted?
Yes, boss, you have to understand that while we say GDP is monetary value of goods and services produced in an economy within a year, when it comes to measurement, the National Bureau of Statistics uses gross output less intermediate consumption. And for many of these sectors, including the financial services sector, the gross output is measured by the revenues. When the revenues, because that's when you say implicit or explicit charges, those are functions of revenue. And it's not just about the gross output. Remember I said it's gross output minus intermediate consumption. Intermediate consumption for many of the sectors, including financial services, include the costs of doing the business, the admin costs, costs of repairs, costs of the various costs, from the intermediate consumption. So the general high cost of doing business, in Nigeria, is impacting on these sectors, and that's why it's important, going forward. If we are looking at ramping up GDP numbers, we're also looking at the cost of doing business, trying to ensure that this cost is down. And particularly for the financial sector, what the major challenges have been. If you look at the MPC reports, again, particularly that of September, the Communique 120, it talked about again, banks again being challenged by high non-performing loans, the weak asset quality. Those issues are still there. And credit to
Professor Uwaleke,
real sector again.
Professor, we need to take a break at this point. Prof, may I respectfully cut in there? We need to take a break very quickly. We'll come back after the break for everyone's 1 minute rounding off this conversation around the third quarter GDP numbers. We'll be right back. So anyway, we're wrapping up the program. 3 guests. We've got 4 minutes to wrap it up. So let's start with Mr. Rewane to give us the first word wrapping up the program. Mr. Rewane, in 1 minute, we are in the electoral season. So how should we fix the GDP much better as we move into the first quarter of next year? Oh, I guess that just hanged in there. Okay, let's move on to Adedayo Bakare. I just get a bit upset with the internet this morning. What about it? Adedayo Bakare is live to us from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Adedayo from AfroInvest. So 1 minute. This is electoral season. What's your reading of first quarter? How do you think we should be moving on with the political, how the political class should move on, really?
Okay, so what we've seen so far in Q4, it's that the campaign season has resumed, and in December in particular, it has intensified. So you expect that since the elections will take place in February, you see more of these activities. Mainly, the economy will be dictated by what is happening around the elections. In terms of policy, we really do not see any major policy shift coming into play. So investors will continue to remain jittery, and policies will remain uncertain until after the elections. We can see a bit of changes in policies. So in terms of oil output, oil output is in Q4, we do not expect a very solid performance too. So we are really counting on the non-oil sector, the festive season, more spending in the economy, more consumer spending, more government spending, more business spending to actually take us higher in Q4 2018. Looking forward until the political uncertainties clear, until after the elections, we might not see a significant shift in policies that would drive positive.
We may have to let you go at this point. Thank you so much for being part of the program. But again, we need to wrap this up in about 2 minutes. We want to give other guests an opportunity to have the final word. Uwaleke, Professor of Capital Markets at the National State University from Abuja. A professor, in 60 seconds or less, how should we move from here?
Thank you, Boston. It's important that politics shouldn't overshadow the economy. We shouldn't sacrifice the economy on the altar of politics. The 2018 budget is still, before us. We have to ensure that it's implemented, particularly the capital component that, that is meant to really drive growth. And we should be more concerned about growth in areas that have strong linkages to employment, as opposed to the oil sector, manufacturing, communication services, construction, including agriculture. Agriculture that used to grow at 4 or 5% in the past, including during the recession, is now growing at under 2%, and that's unacceptable. The interventions that we have getting from the central bank, efforts should be made to ensure that the beneficiaries are really assessing them. And that's why I think the recent move by the central bank to set up a committee to ensure that the 500 billion export promotion grant is assessed is a step in the right direction.
Professor, so thank you so much, Professor Uwaleke. We need to leave it there at your end. Professor, thank you so much. Let's give the final word, final chance to 1 minute or less to Mr. Rewane, who's back online to us. Mr. Rewane.
Again, investment. That's all we need to emphasize. We cannot run an economy based on exceptions and interventions. Investment, confidence, markets and policies. That is the way forward. This is not a short game. This is a long game, and it's a long race. It's a marathon. We must get there, and we will get there. There's no question. I'm optimistic about the future.
Mr. Rewane, I love that optimism at the end of the day. Starting our Monday with that on that note and wrapping up the program for today. Thank you very much, Bismarck Rewane, the CEO at Financial Derivatives Company, China Television Economic Counselor, Professor Uwaleke of Capital Markets at the National State University. Live to us from Abuja. We thank you very much for your time this morning, as well as Adedayo Bakare, who is a macroeconomic strategist at the Nigerian Stock Exchange studios, downtown Lagos. I'll see you again tomorrow. And this conversation is not over yet. Don't think so. We'll be back in 24 hours.